What's up, guys? Welcome into another episode of the Wolverine Live Recruiting Show. I am your host, EJ Holland. Tonight is the Q&A show, and it looks like we have a ton of questions already in the chat box. But don't worry, I'll get through all of them. So make sure to leave your question in that chat box, and it will get answered tonight. Also, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel for free, get notifications every time we drop new videos, which again has been pretty often with all the recruiting news, and the likes, help us get in front of other Michigan fans so we can continue to get great questions and have great discussion. And also we have a special promo code for our YouTube viewers, and that is UM1. Use that promo code over at thewolverine.com. Get $1 for 2 months using the promo code UM1. That gets you insider recruiting information, team information, basketball, transfer portal, and so much more. Plus, you get to be part of a great message board community with more than 8,000 unique individual users. So come subscribe today over at thewolverine.com. It's $1 for 2 months, and it's great because July obviously has the barbecue at the Big House later this month. So even more recruiting information. And then into August, obviously camp reports and all that good stuff as the season gets underway. So subscribe to thewolverine.com. Let's go ahead and answer your questions. And let's start off with Kevin Frazier, who was here at 1:40 p.m. So shout out to Kevin for being here extremely early. He says, EJ, any shot at Jerome Myles? I thought he read he will be at the barbecue. He would be a take even with the current projected class. No. Yes, I think Jerome Myles is a guy they would make room for. I mean, he is a freak athlete. He's listed at 6'3", 215 pounds, but he runs a sub 10.5 100 meters. So that's absolutely blazing, especially for his size. We've made a lot about Philip Wright running a 10.46. I mean, Jerome Myles runs faster than that, and he's much bigger. So, he is that freak type athlete that would be a dynamic playmaker on the outside. I know they already have a bigger bodied wide receiver in the class in Jacob Washington, but, and Jacob Washington obviously made a nice jump in the rankings in the On3 update. But I think this size is something that you need in the receiver room anyway. You look at last cycle, and Michigan only took 2 wide receivers, Marion Stewart and Channing Goodwin, both slot guys. So there's still a need for more size in the room. And I made this point when Jacob Washington committed. Michigan hadn't landed a receiver 6'3" or taller since Darius Clemens, who transferred out, and Amarion Walker, who bounced back and forth between offense and defense. And that was back in the 2022 recruiting cycle. We're currently in the 2025 recruiting cycle. So it's been a while. So I don't see any issue with Michigan finding a way to make room for Jerome Myles. Now, in terms of the barbecue visit, that's still supposed to be on the docket, but he is getting increased interest from Auburn, Texas A&M, and some of the other SEC schools after decommitting from Ole Miss. And Utah, as you see here, is considered the favorite to keep him close to home. So some tough competition here, but Michigan is in the mix for Jerome Myles. Let's go ahead and go over to Malachi, and he says, hey, EJ, do you think it's too late in the cycle to swing for a kid like Michael Igbinoghene? I think he's really underrated and reminds me of a young Mike Sainristil currently trending to Vandy. Yeah, it looks like he's a industry 4-star despite being a 3-star on all the services. But and Vanderbilt has the lead on the On3 recruiting prediction machine. This isn't a kid that Michigan has offered, nor is it a name that has been brought up to me. I think right now, and you look at his size, he's 5'9.5". So that would probably be more of a nickel. Michigan isn't looking to add another nickel, another Mike Sainristil type. That's why they didn't go after Shamari Earls. They already have that type of guy in Kainoa Winston. So I don't think they'll seek that type of prospect. Nate the Great says, hey, EJ, thoughts on Ivan Taylor? Is he a free safety all the way, or could he move inline and play corner? Yeah, so Michigan obviously with a big flip this week, flipping top 100 safety Ivan Taylor away from Notre Dame. And with Ivan Taylor, he's a really high floor prospect. He's very technical, has a high football IQ, plays with great awareness, has a great understanding of what the opposition is trying to do. He's the son of former Super Bowl champion Ike Taylor, so he grew up around the game. So none of that is really surprising. He has decent size at about 6'1.5", 180 pounds. You know, he looks a little thin on film and can continue to add weight. And that's the thing with Ivan Taylor. You know, Charles Power, our On3 rankings director, kind of talked about it, but I think Ivan Taylor is a really high floor prospect. I'm not sure there's much of a ceiling there, but you know what you're getting in Ivan Taylor, and he could be an early impact player at Michigan. And yeah, they do like him as a true safety. I don't think he has a ton of corner flexibility. I think he has some nickel flexibility. That's actually what Notre Dame was recruiting him at. So I think he shares, you know, if you're looking for a Michigan roster comparison, I think he shares a lot of traits with Rod Moore. I think he shares a lot of traits with Jacob Oden as well, who came in from last cycle. And actually, Jacob Oden served as Ivan Taylor's player host. And, you know, usually they try to pair guys with players that are, you know, in the same type of mold from a playing standpoint. So not really a surprise to me that Jacob Oden served as Taylor's player host. So yeah, I think, you know, corner, probably not. He does play a little bit of it on film, but most of his stuff is at safety. And like I said, I see him more as a Rod Moore, Jacob Oden type as opposed to a corner. But yeah, more of a safety than a nickel. He's not going to play the Mike Sainristil role. Like I said, that's Kainoa Winston. He'll mostly be a Rod Moore type. Nate the Great back with another one. He says, EJ, I saw two. Oh, we have a super chat. Remember, guys, if you leave a super chat, that means you skip the line. So you don't have to worry about all these early birds. You can just go ahead and skip the line. So shout out to Go Blue Hasbula for leaving a $1.99 super chat. And he says, percent chance that Babalola ends up in the class. That's a good question. So if we're saying it's basically down to Stanford and Michigan, let's just put 100% around both of those schools. So right now, I would say it's 52% Stanford and 48% Michigan. So whereas, you know, I would have said a couple of weeks ago, it was 70-30 Stanford to Michigan. So Michigan, I think, is closing the gap. They are all in on Babalola. Like, they are in contact on a daily basis. They are making him feel like a priority. They are doing everything they can to pitch the football aspect. Obviously, Stanford has great academics, but Michigan far superior when it comes to the football program, when it comes to development, specifically offensive line development. You know, the education at Stanford is obviously tremendous, but Michigan, the #1 public school in the country. You know, I'd still give Stanford the tiny edge just because we haven't heard anything that's made us, you know, give Michigan that bump up to the lead spot. But I think Michigan's doing everything they possibly can in this recruitment. They're doing everything the right way in this recruitment. The commits have been involved. Carter Smith told me he's been talking to Babalola. Eli Owens has been in his ear. You know, a couple other guys in the class have also been in contact. You know, they're all in on him because he's really the only offensive line target left on the board. You know, this offensive line board started off with so many names, right? Like, you had guys like John Mills drop off and Rowan Byrne drop off and kind of told to look elsewhere. You had the Gorman guys come in and all have committed elsewhere. So really, it's kind of been down to, you have Gatch as your guard, you have Strayhorn as your center. Now you need your tackle. And so, you know, Babalola is the most important target left on the board right now. Like, they absolutely need to find a way to leapfrog Stanford. And I think they're right there. But like I said, I would go 52-48, 51-49, something like that, with Stanford having the slightest of edges at this point. So again, guys, if you want to leave a super chat, you can obviously hit that little money sign. That money goes directly to our travel budget so I can continue to see top recruits around the country. I was actually texting with Ivan Taylor's head coach right now, telling him I'm planning to go out there in the fall. I'm going to be spending a lot of time in Florida with Ivan Taylor and Carter Smith and Brady Hart and the IMG guys. So should be a really fun fall. So hit that super chat button and that leapfrogs you to the top of the line. Let's go back to Nate the Great. He says, EJ, I saw 2-on-3 predictions for cornerback Jayden Sanders. Where do we stand with him? Yes, I was one of them. I put in the first prediction for Jayden Sanders to end up at Michigan. Our Texas writer, Justin Wells, who's a good friend of mine, also put in a prediction for Michigan. Yeah, I'm feeling really good about Michigan closing with Jayden Sanders. I thought they made a big move on his unofficial visit last month and kind of even things out with Oklahoma State, which is the other school at the top of his list. Now they're getting him back on campus for the barbecue at the Big House. That's the only visit he has scheduled for the month of July. And then he's supposed to make a decision that first week of August. So I think if everything goes right on that barbecue at the Big House visit, Michigan should be able to seal the deal here. So I'm feeling really confident from talking to both Jayden, his mother. We had a great interview over at thewolverine.com with his mom. So again, if you're not subscribed, use that promo code UM1. And, Justin Wells, who's the Texas writer that put in the prediction with me, he actually lives in East Texas, not too far away from Kilgore. And he's been covering East Texas high school football longer than I've been covering recruiting, which is more than a decade. So, he's very plugged in out there. And we both felt pretty good about Michigan landing Jayden Sanders. And you see him, you see his profile. He's moved up the rankings. On3 now lists him as a top 250 prospect. 24/7 lists him as a top 250 prospect. So he's definitely a guy on the rise. And the thing about East Texas, obviously Texas is my home state. That part of the state is a lot of small town football, like Friday Night Lights type of football, like it's portrayed in the movies. Like that's how it would be in East Texas. So a lot of times guys like that can fly under the radar. East Texas produces a ton of talent, but like I said, more small schools. So you don't have the media coverage that you have in Dallas or Houston. So I think Jayden Sanders is just a guy not a lot of people have been able to see. But, when you turn on the tape, you see the measurables. I mean, there's a lot to really like about him. And like I said, I think Michigan's in a good spot as long as the visit goes well. Tyson Smith says, I don't know why I cannot click. There we go. Tyson Smith says, EJ, how do you feel about the Notre Dame haters? Why are you still being mean to them? Isn't it unprofessional? All right, guys. I'm not sure what happened there. I think the Notre Dame haters tried to cancel me from answering this question, but I got booted off. So hopefully it's just like the Wi-Fi issues that have been going on, like nationwide, I guess. I've been having issues with my Wi-Fi like the last 2 days. So hopefully it was just that. But it says, EJ, how do you feel about all the Notre Dame haters? Why are you still being mean to them? Isn't it unprofessional? Yeah, I like the Notre Dame haters. It's fun to me. It entertains me. I think it kind of fuels me. It's enjoyable to watch them get so angry and care so much about what I have to say. Like they should. I feel like I produce more clicks for them than anybody else. They even had like their little local USA Today and fan-sided pages write stories around what I had to say on Twitter. Like I think all of that is hilarious. Like it seriously entertains me so much. Why am I still being mean to them? It kind of just fell into place because of the Ivan Taylor flip. It's not like I was just being mean to them out of the blue. And isn't it unprofessional? Yeah, I mean, I guess, but I don't know. You guys know I've never been like a professional guy. Like I cover high school students. My wife's the one that has to be a professional. She's going to be a doctor. I just spend my days on YouTube chatting with you guys and spend my days on the message board chatting with people. So I don't really see myself as a professional. I'm just a guy with some access and a travel budget. So I don't really care. I mean, it's like, why should we follow these? I just say what I feel, right? Like, we should live in a society where we should be able to say what we feel. So who cares if I say the Notre Dame fans are weird or I say the competitors suck? Like, I mean, you guys think that. That's why y'all are behind a screen name saying things like that. But I just say it in real life. And like, I feel like we should live in a society where we should tell the truth. Honesty is the best policy. And I'm just being honest. All right. They are weird. So will we land Babalola? Like I said earlier, I would still give the tiniest of marginal edges to Stanford, but Michigan's done a great job of closing the gap. And like I said earlier, when you look at Stanford, that elite education is tough to pass up. You go out west, it has a great campus, things of that nature. It's a great experience for a lot of guys. But, if you're Babalola, if you're an elite offensive lineman, how do you pass up Michigan knowing that it also checks the box from an academic standpoint? Like, the offensive line development is far superior. The football program is far superior. I think they've just really been, the Michigan staff has really been hammering the football side home. And I do think it's made an impact with Babalola, who is looking to make a decision at some point this summer. And like I said, I think the staff's done a great job. The commits have done a great job, and they've seriously closed the gap here. Let's go to Nate the Great. And he says, does Carter Smith remind you at all of TCU's Max Duggan? 2022 Fiesta Bowl still leaves a sour taste in my mouth. That's really the only game I watched Max Duggan play in. I didn't really cover him as a recruit. I didn't watch TCU very much. And, like most of you guys know, I don't really watch college football a lot because I'm at high school games on Saturdays. Like, I was literally just looking at Kainoa Winston's schedule, and I'm like, yes, Saturday games. And like, as a recruiting reporter, Saturday games are the best things ever because that means you can double up, even triple up with Thursday games. So, it's not just I can hit a game on Friday night. It's like I can hit a game on Friday night in one state, get back home and go to a Saturday game in the DMP. Like, it's great when you have Saturday games. So anyway, I didn't get a chance to see Max Duggan very much. But my player comp for Carter was actually Cordell Stewart, who I grew up watching as a kid. And, the reason I kind of liken Carter to Cordell is because he's such a dynamic playmaker with his legs. He's not as polished of a passer, but he has a tremendous arm. Like I've said many times, through in the 90s as an underclassman playing baseball. And I think that, that slash playmaking ability, like Cordell's nickname, like that's what you get in Carter. When you turn on his film, man, he is so fun to watch as a runner. And I think he's progressing as a passer really well this offseason. He's improving his lower body mechanics. He's improving his release much quicker, just his overall motion. So I really like Carter as that super high-end athletic quarterback. And, I know you think Cordell Stewart, you think of this dynamic guy. That is Carter, man. Like, I mean, there's Cordell's on the cover of NFL Blitz, which I still play. And he's so fun to play with in that game, which features absurd rules because he is that type of athlete. And I think Carter is that type of guy as well. So Cordell would be my player comp for Carter. Top 5 songs on your playlist. That's an interesting question. Top 5 songs on my playlist. I mostly listen to rap music, so that's going to be what's on there, but kind of low key or kind of mellowed out. So I would go with Tennessee Kevin Abstract, who's out of my sort of home area, Corpus Christi, Texas. I would go Carnival Kanye. I would go Modern Jam Travis Scott, also shout out Texas. I would go Superboy Kid Cudi. And then I would go with Morena Tornillo. There we go. Throwing some Mexican music in there. All right, let's go Tyson Smith. He says, Who do you like more, Kainoa Winston or Ivan Taylor? Man, that is a tough question. I actually have them ranked in the same range, like that top 100 to top 150 range. Both are really high floor prospects. I don't think Taylor or Winston will really move a lot in the rankings because you kind of know what you're getting with each guy. Like I said with Taylor, you're getting a guy who grew up around the game, who's very aware, he's smart, has a high football IQ. Again, not this elite athlete, but really fluid, moves well. And then on the flip side of the coin with Kainoa, you're not getting the biggest of safeties. You're getting more of a true nickel, but man, he is like a missile out there. He's extremely physical. His closing speed is tremendous. And he's another guy that just has a really high football IQ as well. And another like X factor thing that I like about Kainoa Winston is he's a playmaker on special teams. Like when you turn on his film, he's blocking a lot of punts and kicks and stuff. So that'll allow him to get on the field pretty early. So both of these guys are super high floor. Like I said, I don't think they're going to move much up in the rankings or down in the rankings, with the exception of rivals for Kainoa Winston. Like that ranking is atrocious. Like I don't even know how they have him as a 3-star. But I have both of them around where On3 has them. I would give the slight edge to Kainoa, but I'm kind of partial to Kainoa because I'm more familiar with him. So I think it's really going to come down to what I see from them in the fall, but I would have them ranked right next to each other. Stephen Lindsay says, what are our chances with Derek Meadows? So top 100 wide receiver Derek Meadows out of Las Vegas Bishop Gorman is set to make his decision on Saturday. And we don't really need to waste much time here. I don't think it'll be Michigan. Stephen Lindsay says, what does our defensive line board look like besides DJ Sanders, and who could you see Michigan going after? DJ Sanders is really the guy on the board. You know, Esposito hasn't dished out any other offers right now. That's the focus, you know, in terms of who else Michigan could go after. It's really to be determined. I think, you know, sometimes defensive linemen, especially nose prospects like a DJ Sanders, who's 6'4", 325, nose prospects kind of, they're late risers. So I think it really depends on fall evaluations. And I would like to see Michigan get a nose. You already have your bigger edge in Jalen Williams. You have your Jalen Harrell type of edge in Julius Holly. You have kind of a tweener in Nate Marshall. You have your lunch pail 3-star, 3 technique in Bobby Kinka. So I'd really like to see them get a Kenneth Grant type nose, which is what DJ Sanders is. So if they can't get DJ Sanders, I'm really interested to see who kind of pops up for Michigan. Stephen Lindsay says, what date is the barbecue at the Big House? It is the last weekend of July, which would be the 26, 27, 28. So that weekend. Stephen Lindsay says, what is your personal rating for each commit, and where would you rate them nationally? That would be like an entire show. I usually do my personal ratings of each commit, you know, going into the season. So I'll probably do that over at the Wolverine sometime in August. And then I do it again in the fall after I've had a chance to get some live evaluations. Like there are guys I've seen a ton, like Carter Smith. And then there are guys that I haven't seen at all, like Jasper Parker, Jacob Washington. So, you know, it'll really depend on my fall travels. Right now, I would say the guys that I have rated the highest, you know, in the top 100, I definitely have Andrew Olesh, that top 100 to 150 range. You know, I definitely have Kainoa Winston, Ivan Taylor, kind of in that next tier, like 175 to 225. I have Carter Smith, who I think will rise, you know, as we see him progress as a passer. And then I have Nate Marshall in there and Jalen Williams in there. So, you know, I think those are some off the top of my head that I've rated pretty high. John A. Schultz says, EJ, did Jordan Young use ChatGPT to answer your questions in your article in the Wolverine last week? Is Michigan pushing anymore now that they have Ivan Taylor and Kainoa Winston, since he could flex to safety? I don't know if he used ChatGPT, but it did kind of sound like that. It'll be interesting to see, like, if you don't, I love to do phone interviews because I feel like I get a lot more out of them. But there are just some guys that are so tough to get on the phone. And so you have to text them, which I hate. I hate doing text interviews. I know that that's kind of become the norm around, the recruiting industry. Like you see a lot of crappy stories with these like one sentence quotes. They're so dumb. They're like worthless. So when you come over to the Wolverine, you get actual phone interviews with extended quotes and all that good stuff. But again, there's just some guys that'll only answer DMs or only answer texts or whatever, like Jordan Young. And his answer was very ChatGPT-esque. But I can't confirm that. But anyway, Michigan is in his top 4. I would say they're, on the back end of that top 4. And, on the off chance that he did want to commit to Michigan, I think they would make room for him. But, the focus right now is on corner. You already have your nickel in Kainoa. You already have your safety in Ivan Taylor. And Jordan Young is a lot like Ivan Taylor, like very similar games with the exception that Jordan Young has some better track times, but, probably a little more explosive of an athlete, whereas Taylor is just kind of a little better when it comes to awareness and having a higher floor. But yeah, I don't really, like I said, they would probably take him, but again, the focus is on corner. Like they absolutely have to find a way to fill the void at the corner position. Like I said, I think they're trending well with Jayden Sanders, but they need to find another one for sure. I know portal will be a big thing for corner, so we'll see how it kind of shakes out. John A. Schultz says, EJ, will Michigan look at adding another true edge with Julius Hawley since Jalen Williams and Marshall are kind of flex defensive linemen? The staff looks at Jalen Williams as a bigger edge, as do I. Like, I know a lot of people are like, well, Jalen Williams is a flex defensive lineman. Like, yeah, he could put on a ton of weight and put his hand in the dirt. I'm not ruling that out. But I think you gain a greater appreciation for Jalen Williams when you see him in person. Like, he has such a great frame with great length. Like, I really value him as an edge. Like, I agree with Wink Martindale and Lou Esposito 1,000%. I think he's a bigger edge. But anyway, they would have obviously taken Marco Jones, who ended up, going to Texas A&M. I'm not sure if they'll put another edge on the board. Maybe if somebody pops up that they really like, or, somebody like Chris Burgess, who's committed to Notre Dame, where there's ties there. He's a good friend of Jalen Williams, and Esposito has done a great job recruiting in Chicagoland and has ties there. So, he would maybe be one to watch, but I don't think they're going to take an edge just to take an edge. It'd have to be someone they, really like and value. John A. Schultz says, piggybacking off my last question, could Michigan round back to Xavier Newsome? I asked because I saw his page and he took no official visits. It just seems like he's waiting for Michigan to make the offer. Maybe, like I said, I don't think they're going to take an edge to take an edge. And I think Newsome's more of a project guy. Ben Ricketts says, any guys in the 26 class that you could see committing soon? Well, it obviously helps to have a quarterback committed already in Brady Hart. I think he's going to do some recruiting on the barbecue visit. He will be there, and there will be several 2026 targets in attendance. It's still a little early for 2026 predictions. I think quarterbacks are the guys that, generally commit early and are prioritized. I think Michigan's still kind of catching up. This cycle was so much, you had so much staff movement and guys resetting their boards and things like that. You're barely seeing Lamar Morgan send out offers in 2026. So not right now. I wouldn't say any 2026 is close, but I think that 2026 has the potential to be a really, really good class with the way Michigan's recruiting, with the way the staff will already have a cycle under their belt, with the stability with Jerome Moore, and you won't have the NFL questions with Jim Harbaugh, and Brady Hart leading the class, who's a high-profile signal caller. Ben Ricketts says, which linebacker situation would you feel best about Michigan landing? Archie flipping from Rutgers, Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng, or a separate linebacker being in the class? That's a tough question. I wouldn't rule out an Archie flip. Rutgers is obviously an inferior program, but it is closer to home. And I know Archie has some things to take care of closer to home. Boateng is just such a wild card, man. Like I believe that he really did enjoy his Michigan visit, but now he's talking about taking fall officials to Florida and to Texas. So that one's just tough to read. And yeah, obviously if they can't flip Archie and Boateng just ends up somewhere else, they'll have to try to find another linebacker. So we'll see how that one shakes out. Ben Rickett says, since Michigan lost out on Earls, who are some additional corner targets? Also, do you think Earls will stick with Georgia or will Michigan continue to recruit him? I don't think they'll be able to flip Shamari. I think they may stay in contact with him, but I think that one's doubtful. In terms of other names, obviously Jayden Sanders, now trending to Michigan. And there you see Shamari, just kind of a tough loss there. Jayden Sanders is trending to Michigan. They are trying to flip some other guys. All of the corners that are committed to Texas A&M, Adonyiss Currie, Kobe Sellers. There's a couple other guys that are committed to Tech. Anybody that's committed to Texas A&M is on that flip radar. Donovan Starr, who's committed to Auburn, is another guy they like. Some sleepers, Caleb Singleton, who's committed to Rutgers, was supposed to make an OV to Michigan, canceled, now might come to the barbecue. Trinity Waitley out of Georgia is another sleeper to know there. Looks like we have a super chat, $4.99 from AJ Ransom. He says, do you see any flip targets for 2025? Do you see any current commitments leaving our class? So yeah, I was talking about flip guys and, a lot of corner flip targets. So I mentioned the A&M guys. The two that I could name off the top of my head were Adonyiss Currie, Kobe Sellers. I know they also have Dejan Petaway and Jamar Beal-Goins. Look, I named all four corners. So A&M has four-star cornerbacks. Obviously, A&M is a heavy NIL school, but, Michigan taking steps forward there. That is a crowded corner class. And, I think the need for the corner position has to be really appealing to a guy that's committed to a class with four corners. I talked about Caleb Singleton, who's committed to Rutgers. Kamar Archie, I wouldn't say that he's completely off the board. I mentioned Chris Burgess, who's committed to Notre Dame as maybe a potential edge target. So yeah, those are kind of the flip guys to know. Donovan Starr as well at corner, who's committed to Auburn. That's kind of it for right now in terms of flip targets that, actual names that I've heard and not just wishful thinking. In terms of guys flipping out, I think everyone's pretty solid. I don't have any reason to worry about anybody. We are going to continue to track Nate Marshall as Auburn continues to push, as Miami maybe is still there. So, Nate Marshall is the only recruit that took an official visit elsewhere. Well, I guess Bobby Kanka took an official to Michigan State, but that was more so Michigan's decision. The only guy that, actually went out there and took an OV that Michigan was worried about was Nate Marshall. So I think he's the one that we kind of have to keep an eye on. But other than that, not really. Let's go down to Silly As Mole. And he says, EJ, how do you interpret Boateng's retweet of Taylor's flip? So yeah, Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng sent out a emoji. I don't really know what to call that emoji, but I think he was just like, wow, look, Ivan Taylor flipped from Notre Dame. I know there were a lot of people trying to interpret it, but that was my take on it, was that he was just like, wow, cool. I don't think there's too much to read into it other than he definitely noticed the flip. Mike Morrow says, any updates on the quarterback one question? Not from me, I really stick to recruiting. So that would be more of a question for Chris Ballas and Anthony Broom and Clayton Safey. They have their shows here on the YouTube channel as well. Juju says, I've been defending your name these last few days as hard as I did Drake and the Kendrick Lamar beef. EJ, what did you do to make Notre Dame fans mad this much. Yeah, like I said, I enjoy the hatred. I appreciate you, Juju, wearing that shield. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't really care. I think it's funny. Like yesterday, I was cooking dinner. I was reading the mean tweets to my wife because she thinks they're hilarious too. But yeah, I mean, they're the thing that makes me even more entertained by it is that I'm over here like hysterically laughing at all the mean tweets, and I know they're behind the keyboard like so angry. That's what really gets me excited. But I guess I'm super cynical. But yeah, I mean, how did I make them so mad? I mean, it was really just obviously the trolling over the last couple of years. But when I initially left Notre Dame, like it was funny because I had taken the Notre Dame job and I hated it, obviously. And I ended up booking a vacation to Roatan that year. I think it was 2020 or no, 2019. Yeah, 2019. I booked a vacation to Roatan, which is why the little monkey's on my shoulder in my profile picture on the Wolverine. But yeah, I ended up booking a vacation, and there was I remember posting that I was going on vacation, and there was a thread, and it was like the last guy that went on vacation left. And I already knew in my head that I was going to flip to Michigan, which made it even more hilarious. And the way that kind of worked out is like I would have been stuck on Notre Dame and been miserable had it not been for Brandon Brown. So if you guys know Brandon Brown, give a shout out to Brandon Brown, because if Brandon Brown hadn't left the Wolverine, which I'm so glad he did, I wouldn't have been able to flip. Once Brandon Brown left the Wolverine, they started looking for a Michigan guy, and I called Stu Coleman, who owned both sites, the Wolverine and the Notre Dame site, and was like, I want to go to Michigan. And so, they were able to get that done quickly. That's why once Brandon Brown left, they slid me in like right away. Like it was instantaneous. And so I think that they cannot like fathom that an outsider came in and thought their program was lame and thought the fan base was so weird, which is just the honest truth. Like they are really weird, and Notre Dame is really lame. So I am very thankful for Brandon Brown. Shout out to Brandon Brown. Bees up, man, or his little buzz, whatever he used to do. Brandon Brown's the man. Juju says, with Sanders and Wright likely committing this month, can you see us having a legit shot at flipping Adonyiss Currie? Yeah, so Michigan's working on him and the other Texas A&M commits. Like I said, A&M has a really crowded corner room right now with 4 commits, and all are on Michigan's board. So yeah, I mean, I think it really comes down to who shows up for the barbecue. Like I know they've talked to Currie about showing up. I know they've talked to Beals Goins about showing up. I know they've talked about Donovan Starr, who's committed to Auburn, and Caleb Singleton, who's committed to Rutgers. Like who's actually going to show up to the barbecue? That's going to give us a clearer picture of which of these guys are legitimate flip targets. But yes, Michigan is very much in contact with Adonyiss Currie and all the A&M commits. Kinetic 615 says, what's up, EJ? Keep putting out great content, bro, and ignore the tools like Ryan. Appreciate it. Noel Soto says, Guanajuato. So shout out to you, man, for listening all the way from Mexico. D. McQueen says, any intel on any cornerbacks that are looking good for us to include in the 25 class? Yeah, like I've been saying, I kind of listed out all those targets. It really is dependent on who shows up to the barbecue. And like I said, I really like Jayden Sanders. Borge Warner says, any under the radar corners we're looking at. I mentioned Caleb Singleton, who's committed to Rutgers. Trinity Waitley is a really intriguing prospect out of Georgia. I really like him. He hasn't taken many visits. Last year was his first year playing football. He has elite track times. He made it to the Georgia State track meet in several events, including the 100-meter. Tall, lanky kid. So interested to see if he makes it out to the barbecue. Kinetic 615 says, EJ, I know you've shot down in the past the idea that recruiting services downland Michigan's commits, but it's like clockwork. As soon as they start trending / commit to us, they get downranked. That's not true. Michigan had quite a few guys rise up. So Carter Smith moved up. Andrew Olesh moved up. Jasper Parker went from 3-star to top 300. Jalen Williams went from 3-star to top 300. Jacob Washington went from 3-star to top 300. Jayden Sanders is trending to Michigan. He went from 3-star to top 300. So, if I'm the On3 rankings director, which we had on the show, by the way, yesterday, if you want to watch that. But if I'm the On3 rankings director and I have an agenda, which he doesn't, but if I did have an agenda, I would just rank all the Michigan guys high because it's it's a humongous site and it's arguably the best site on On3. So why wouldn't I please that audience? So, I don't really buy into that theory. Let's see. Juju says, EJ, important fajitas or arroz con gandules? Definitely fajitas all the way. I haven't had any good fajitas in a long time. Like, I know people just go to like these random Tex-Mex restaurant or not. I guess they don't have Tex-Mex anywhere else. But I know that people go to these like authentic Mexican restaurants, and it's not really like Tex-Mex, man. Like that's really what I miss. So I've been sad that I haven't been able to get any good Mexican food. There's like one Mexican like pocket in Norfolk where I live right now, and like I have to drive 20 minutes just to go get good Mexican food. Porch Warner says, are we still in on Boateng, or are there any other linebackers we could go after? Yeah, Michigan's definitely in on Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng. Like, obviously the visit high's worn off a little bit. And like I said earlier, now he's talking about potentially making OVs to Florida and to Texas in the fall. So it looks like this one's just going to be a long one. If I were Michigan, I'd start making some contingency plans. I don't think you can just have a class of Chase Taylor. No disrespect to Taylor, but you need at least another guy, especially with Taylor being a high upside prospect. If there's one critique, which there hasn't been many critiques on Michigan recruiting lately, it'd be the lack of urgency with linebackers. You already have Kamar Archie gone to Rutgers. It's definitely far from a slam dunk that you get Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng. Like, where's the urgency with linebackers? That's the one position. Well, linebacker and corner is the one position where I'm concerned about, but I really like Jayden Sanders. So I think if you can get him in the boat at the barbecue, then I'd be less concerned. I'd be more concerned about linebacker at that point, especially since there always seems to be portal targets at corner, an abundance of them. And Lamar Morgan has shown that he can land guys out of the portal like he did this offseason. So I don't know. I'm curious to see how linebacker recruiting plays out. P. Maximus says, I would really like to add a true nose guard that clogs the middle and takes on 2 blockers. Anyone thinking about us? Really, it's DJ Sanders. Like I said earlier, I texted his mom the other day, and they're still making plans to come to the barbecue at the big house, but Texas is pushing for him to get things done sooner rather than later. Right now, I would give Texas over the edge over Michigan, but he's the guy on that board right now. He's really the only guy. And like I mentioned earlier in this show, there are some, generally are some late risers at the nose position. So I think fall evaluations will probably be key for that. And Joseph Grimaldi says, EJ, any update on the defensive tackle board for this cycle or possibly for 26? So obviously we just kind of touched on that. DJ Sanders really the only name. I don't think Esposito's had a chance to properly evaluate the 2026 recruiting class yet. He doesn't have a ton of offers out along the defensive line. I think he'll spend some more time doing that here in the next month or two and as we get into the fall. Let's go ahead and go down to Thomas Orzak. He says, Michigan go 10-2 at best. Agreed. The passing game looks weak. Wide receivers are weak. Like I said, I don't really cover the team, but I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how they do this fall. Obviously, it's a new staff, but the defense has a ton of great returning talent. So I think they'll still have a good season for sure. Benjamin Dover says, what's up with Ben Nichols from Davison? So Ben Nichols, a local in-state offensive lineman in the 2026 recruiting class, actually ranked pretty high. He camped at Michigan last month. They did not offer. So I think they just want to see a little bit more, and they have some other priorities on the offensive line board. So right now he's not really a guy for Michigan. You see Michigan State trending on the RPM. So and his rankings are kind of weird. Like On3 has him pretty high, 24/7 has him as a 3-star. ESPN doesn't even have him ranked. I don't really know much about him as a prospect. I haven't looked too much into him since Michigan hasn't offered. Borge Warner says, we are taking over the Sunshine State. That's right. I am going to be there in the fall. Happy Bradley says, who is likely going to be the next 2025 commit? Philip Wright is set to make his decision on Saturday. I like where Michigan is trending there. Let's go rapid fire. And this is the last call for super chats. Also, we have 162 people watching live, so we should have 162 likes. So make sure to like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel for free, get updates every time we drop a new video. And also subscribe to the Wolverine.com. We are running a special promo code right now, UM1, exclusively for our YouTube viewers. That's $1 for 2 months over at the Wolverine.com. So if you like what you see on the YouTube channel, you have even more insider recruiting information over at the Wolverine.com, where I'm around to answer questions all day. All right, let's go rapid fire. We have Kinetic 615. Where do we stand with Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng? Are we in or out? He seemed real hot on Michigan for a bit. Now it seems to have cooled a bit. What's the deal there? Yeah, like I said, I think the visit high's worn off. Michigan's going to continue to be in that top group. But if he takes it into the fall, it's going to become a long game. Let's go down to Kinetic 615 again. He says, am I wrong for being more excited for Carter Smith than I am about Brady Hart? No, I mean, obviously I love Brady Hart. I love Carter Smith too. I think it's exciting to think about what Carter Smith can be because of his legs. Like there's so much you can do with a true dual threat guy at the collegiate level. Brady Hart is an athletic pocket passer. He's much more polished as a passer than Carter, but Carter has that X factor. Like I said, I likened him to Cordell Stewart. Like you kind of want that. Like you kind of want that type of guy in the college game because he can be such a dynamic playmaker back there, especially in Michigan's offense. It's really fun to think about what Carter could do. I mean, I would even run some triple option out there. Like there's so much you can do with him. It'd be super exciting. Like I think, I think about like playing the game with West Virginia back in the day and using Pat White and Steve Slayton. Like I would just do a bunch of veer and option and all types of stuff with Carter Smith. Like he is a really, really fun player. Let's go down to David. He says, what are the chances Michigan can flip quarterback Brandon Lockhart in 2026? His sister is at Michigan. Yeah, I know they offered him and he had been angling for an offer and then nothing really came of that offer. So I don't know. He's kind of slipped my mind a little bit. But we'll see. I think right now Oregon is supposed to be the favorite to flip him. Let's go down to Q Storm 39. He says, any chance we land Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng? We've already kind of addressed that. Wolverine Nation says, hey, EJ, do you think the 2026 class will have any 5-stars for Michigan? I think Brady Hart could be a 5-star. KBUH King says, if Babalola makes a decision sooner rather than later, does that benefit Michigan or Stanford? I don't know, man. It's super close, like I said earlier, and I do think a decision will come sooner rather than later. I don't think he takes it past, early August. So, yeah, I think right now both schools have some reason to feel optimistic, and I like that Michigan's made up some ground. Let's go down to AJ Ransom with his second super chat of the day. What are the odds the NCAA rescinds the satellite policy to allow to get eyes in our opponent's backyard? I'm not really sure what you're referring to, AJ. Michigan is allowed to have satellite camps. They had a couple this summer. They've just kind of gone down in worth. So the thing about satellite camps now is you don't need to go to a satellite camp to see a kid and talk to a kid. The NCAA changed its rules to where during the spring evaluation period, coaches can actually meet with the kids and meet with the parents. So Lamar Morgan, for example, went down to Florida and met with Ivan Taylor and his mom and had a chance to interact with him, as opposed to previous years during the spring evaluation period, there was no contact allowed. So that's kind of negated satellite camps. Like there's really no value in them other than scouting a couple of under the radar kids. But Michigan did have a few. They had one in Georgia. They had one in New Jersey. They had one in Texas. So they had a handful of satellite camps. They're just not really a big deal anymore. Let's see. Borge Warner says, our class is looking great. Do you think it'll be even better next year? I think the potential is there. Like I said, there will be staff stability. You'll have a great early leader in Brady Hart. You know, you won't have NFL rumors anymore. Sharon Moore is gonna keep it stable. So yeah, I think I think that next year has a lot of potential. Butter XO says, how many safeties and corners does Michigan want to take? Also, does Michigan consider Winston as a corner since he projects as a slot? No, he is a nickel. So they consider him a safety / nickel. And obviously Ivan Taylor's a safety. They want 2 corners. So that would be four total. And they're definitely going to hit the portal for more corner help. Struggle Streaming says, good evening, EJ. If Michigan can only get 3 more players in the 25 class, what 3 players would you want them to get? That's a good question. DJ Sanders for sure. I think, you know, he's the guy that would fill a big need at nose. He's very similar to Kenneth Grant. Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng, because the linebacker board is completely empty. If you don't land Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng, what do you do from there? So, you know, he would be the guy that I would really want. And then Andrew Babalola, obviously, you already have a center, you already have a guard. And Babalola is the only guy left on the offensive line board. If you don't land him, what do you do there? So, you know, just not having many names at linebacker or offensive line, I think makes Boateng and Babalola like absolute, you know, must land type of guys. KS says Elijah Melendez still visiting, not looking likely. AJ Ransom says, what 2026 wide receiver targets are we / Brady Hart recruiting? A few names to know. Jalen Piles coming in for the barbecue out of Texas. Travis Johnson's coming in for the barbecue. He's an on 300 receiver out of Virginia. So those are the 2 guys I know will be at Michigan at the end of the month. Daisier Carter is another top 100 guy out of Virginia, who's actually a teammate of Savion Hyder. So, you know, those are a handful of receivers to know. D. McQueen says, I meant the 2026 class for corners. I don't see us being able to pull any for the 2025 class. I don't even remember what D. McQueen's question was. Sorry, D. McQueen. But, you know, in terms of 2026 corners, like I said, Lamar Morgan just really started offering a lot of corners in the 26 class like the last 2 weeks. So I think he's just starting to develop relationships there. KS says, who lied and said Brian Jean Mary was a good recruiter? You know, historically, he's landed some guys. When you look back at his resume at Texas, he landed a lot of high profile guys, but I tried to explain that some of that had to do with Charlie Strong, who is very heavily involved with personally recruiting linebackers. When he got to Michigan, he did have a great land with Junior Colson. And then obviously he left Michigan after that. So there's no other data to really go off of, but, you know, he's an experienced recruiter. He's maybe not as aggressive as some of the young guys on staff, but he does have a lot of experience. I just think, you know, linebacker obviously has been a little disappointing. Let's go down to Struggle Streamer BK. He says, do you think Jayden Davis will ever throw a meaningful pass for Michigan with Carter and Brady coming in right behind them? Well, he has a year ahead on them and had the benefit of enrolling early, and there's still going to be question marks about the quarterback room probably next year, you know, especially if they go with like Tuttle, because this will be his last year of eligibility. So, Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely a chance he throws meaningful passes because Jayden Davis has such a high floor and he can be a game manager. Like, that's really all you need to do in Michigan's offense. Like, there's no reason Jayden Davis can't be Cade McNamara. Dennis Tidick says, how's Jayden Davis doing? I'm not really sure, to be honest. That's more of a question for our team guys, but I don't think he's going to be in the mix to really play this year. Tim Lentke says, what's keeping Avery Gash from being a 5-star? Is it because he's an offensive lineman from Michigan? I think the kid is a surefire high pro draft pick when he completes his college career. Well, yeah, right now he's a 3-star on 3. So, I mean, we're talking 3-star to 5-star. That's going to be super difficult. But, I have Avery Gash graded higher than on 3, but not much higher than, or not higher than the other services. So I have him as like a borderline top 300 guy. The reasoning is, the positives with Avery Gash are he's extremely physical. He finishes blocks. He plays with a really nasty attitude. He's a terrific road grader in the run game. And I think he'll be a perfect fit at Michigan and a multi-year starter. The negatives with Avery Gash are he's about 6'4", 275, so not a super impressive frame, not a super impressive lengthy guy, doesn't have much tackle flexibility, has heavy feet, not a great athlete. He's an adequate athlete. He's not really a guy that has those traits that you look for in a 5-star offensive lineman, but I think he can be a really, really good guard at the next level. I'm not going to say he'll be a Zach Zinter type of guard. Zach Zinter is arguably the best offensive lineman I've seen in game, but I do think he, fits that type of mold in the sense that he's really physical. He finishes blocks. He's a good technician. But there are just things you look for when you're grading guys in that 5-star category that I don't think Gash really has. Jackson Ross says, how are you feeling about Andrew Marsh? Still feeling really good. He's expected to visit Washington as well at the end of the month. Kentucky's still trying there, and obviously they have some NIL. But I think getting him back at the barbecue will be really good for Michigan. I still feel positive there. Jimmy Bailey says, do you think the threat of the NCAA hammer is deterring elite talent? No, I don't think the hammer is scaring anybody off. And Carter Selby says, us at Notre Dame own you. No, I actually own you. That's why you're here on the YouTube channel watching me. And thank you all for watching me, even all the Notre Dame haters and everybody. We went almost an hour today. Again, make sure to like this video. Subscribe to our YouTube channel completely for free. Subscribe to the Wolverine.com using that promo code UM1. That's $1 for 2 months for more premium insider information. And I will be back next week to answer even more of your questions.